started talking about the flow of this research paper, and I just finished the abstract, and I said like there are seven components which are supposed to be covered. Please ensure that these things are covered so that you have a very good abstract coming out. The next part is about the introduction. When we talk about introduction, basically we are referring in terms of what is known, what is unknown, how and why should we fill up the gaps. Now, these are the things which we are supposed to discuss when we talk about this introduction. Introduction should be very much stimulating. It should get the attention of the readers. There should be an interest, there should be a desire which you are able to arouse through your writing. So please ensure that the introductory part, at the end of the introductory part, you have already explained or justify as to why are you undertaking this study, by using here and there a little bit of literature review, trying to justify in terms of why you want to take this. And some disturbance, we have to participants. Yeah. Okay, so abstract can accommodate 500 to 1,000 words. Please see that you don't cross these things. The word limit, whatever has been prescribed, if you strictly follow these things, then you will see at the end it is reaching around 6,000 to 7,000. Otherwise, there are chances that you may exceed it. Now let's move to the next part. You can see like there are six elements that needs to be looked upon. One is, first is the theme, a broader theme that you have considered for your study, the importance, and try to cite the most important previous studies, indicate the gaps, inconsistencies which have been observed through your reading. You will definitely find this particular area has not been studied, and it gives a chance for you to undertake this study. So any controversies, because certain arguments you may not agree, and you try to get a defense for it, and that gives a chance for you to undertake a study. So these aspects have to be looked upon. You have this research objectives. At the end of the introduction, you will find that most of the authors, they will come out with their objectives being stated, because everything should be included in this introductory part. And of course, you will just have the final structure which is falling in place, how the flow will be, like what are the steps you are going to do, and that is what has been covered in this introduction. So these are some examples. I'll not go through it as we are running out of time. So element 1, 2, theme, importance, landmark studies are nothing but previous studies. Please see that you do refer good journals, and when you are reading those journals, definitely good journals, you will find that there are some important landmark studies which have been covered. Of course, there are several number of authors who would have contributed, but what is important is you try to see the credential of the journal and pick up those things in your work. When you refer those names, maybe somewhere the weightage of the paper will be on the higher side. So these are certain aspects. Next, you can see gap. You have to necessarily find out the gap, because that gives a solid reason for you to undertake the study, and of course followed by objectives and structure. And the next part is about literature review. You can see there the literature review plays a very important role. It actually gives you an opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge, right? I have read. That is what you are supposed to indicate to the reviewer. So we have to do a thorough literature review, and then there are so many advantages of going through literature review. You can see there in the next slide. It basically, when we talk about literature review, we say it critically evaluates, it reorganizes, and you are going to synthesize. I mean, all these functions are very much happening when we talk about literature review. Literature review is nothing but a study of the past, what has happened in that area, who are the people who have actually contributed, who are the big giants who have said something about that area. Now, these things are getting highlighted when we talk about literature review. So it should be a brief discussion of where the specific, in fact, you have taken a topic, and you should also figure out actually where it fits into a bigger picture. And that's what is the attempt that has been tried by the authors. You can see there the very purpose of literature review is to demonstrate, is to identify concept. Yes, I want to do a research work, but I don't know what to do. Then we say like, please read the literature. Most of the research scholars, they feel like, okay, you do 100 research review, literature review, you do 150 literature, but they fail to understand what is that they are getting out of this literature. Now, through my experience, what I have seen is whenever we are reading the literature review, we definitely will come to know who are the kings, who are the giants, who have like really done what we say, seminal kind of a study in those areas. Who are those people, what their study is saying? That is one aspect. Second is, it also helps you to develop your own concept. I take his argument, her argument, and try to see, like, can I really develop some new kind of a concept which can evolve? Because every time whenever I want to propose something, there has to be a backing for it, and it has to be justified. So that is why we say, like, to justify the research gaps, you need to do literature review. And not only that, even for theoretical support, we need a lot of theoretical support for hypothesis testing. So for hypothesis testing, you will find that we need to support it with theoretical support, because most of us, we just write, I like this hypothesis, I just write it. No, it doesn't go in that. Whenever we have an empirical study, we always say that you need to justify how this hypothesis is actually getting evolved, how it is actually coming out. All these aspects you are able to figure out from this literature. Literature review also contributes in terms of the methodology. When you read, no, you will come to know, like, what others have done, what constructs they have used. Am I going to use the same kind of a construct, or should I go for adapting the construct? What changes I need to bring in my study? All these aspects you are able to figure out from this literature review. And literature review sometimes it also tells you the data source, right, and how others have structured their work, what all they have done. So these are the benefits that are there. If you ask me personally, feel that literature review plays a very important role in getting the overall knowledge about your paper. So it is a theoretical part there, the theory, because anything that you want to propose should be supported by a very good backing. There should be a backing. Now, background check, background information, all these things you are able to get. Again, one more paper which is in the pipeline, what we say, a working paper and all, which has been sent to one of the good journals for reviewing. You'll find that this is what takes a shape. In fact, you will find in your research paper a proposed model. So this is a proposed model which you can see. These are nothing but it's about brand community having an influence on brand trust, and this has an influence on brand equity, and finally the consumer response. So this is the model what has been worked out, and you can see there all those hypotheses, H1A, H1T. These are influencing the customer centric model, and further it is influencing the antecedents of brand equity. So these are the aspects that are really worked out on this paper, and this is how you have to go about in writing hypothesis. This is one sample. Definitely different authors will have different kind of approach in writing the hypothesis, but hypotheses are required for empirical evidence checking. So when you set the hypothesis, it really adds value to your paper. So please do set some hypothesis, because I'm sure you're going to do it on primary data, and when you do on primary data, you're definitely going to test something. So for testing, you need all these things. So that is what has been worked out. One side we are proposing a model, you can see there. The other side we are also testing the hypothesis. Both these two combination will really make you strong. So these are hypotheses. I'll just quickly go through it. Now, what are the sources that we have? You can see there, it can be books, it can be electronic database, it can be government and industry report. A lot of stuff is available on internet. And go through dissertation work, thesis, or it can be your Scholar. I would like to emphasize on this snowballing, a very interesting concept. Like when you find out some 3 to 4 good research papers which actually addresses your concern. Now you read those research papers. When you're reading, please read the reference. Now from the reference, you try to unlock it or unpack it. Now go to the original sources. Now that's the best way, because good research paper, if you have identified 4 good research paper which are pertaining to your area where you want to come out with a research paper, if you have identified that research paper, 4 good research paper, you look at the reference. Now from reference, you unpack yourself and try to go to the original source. So this is the best way, because I'm sure, like, any good paper which we are reading right now is because of their references. So a lot of strength comes to them from the references. So please go and unpack and go to the original source to understand the story in a complete manner. So if you get it, maybe things are going to be very good. So you can see that some more other things about, once you are through with this references, literature review, you talk about objectives. Objectives have to be very specific. You can see there, you can use words such as to determine, to investigate, to compare, to evaluate. All these things are, like these are the words these which we try to use to evaluate what, to determine what. So this is how we are supposed to write. In fact, they say like the objective should not be more than five because it leads to confusion. And also, please see that even those who are doing research work, especially PhD research work, 4 to 6 good objectives, and these objectives in turn should address your research problem. So ensure that the objectives are well defined. Next, we talk about design. Design is the heart of the research work. It basically talks about the sampling method, sample framework, sample units, the number of sample units, how do you go about in determining your sample size, what is the response rate, 90%, 70%, what is the duration of the study, then data collection mode, personally you have collected or through Google survey. I mean, what is the methodology you have adopted? Of course, you also have certain things, certain times like you are going for a pilot testing of your questionnaire. Okay, and maybe before you make it a final questionnaire, you go for pilot testing. Then there will be phase wise studies. Nowadays even incentives are being provided because nobody would like to give free response. They have to be remunerated, so some sort of incentives are also allowed. And what sort of statistical tools you are going to use, all these things combined together, we say it is the research design. Design is really very important for anybody to undertake the study. So you can see here some example what I have worked out for my paper. You can quickly go through it. Design is there, frame is there, method is there, population is there, pre-survey is there, right? And all these things are nothing but any good paper will try to have these components. If you want to write, please make a note of these things and see that these things are incorporated in your paper. So measures, now many a time we come across this term measures. I want to validate my scale. So either I will be adapting somebody's scale because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Somebody has really worked out and he has developed a scale. I can quickly adapt that scale or borrow that scale and use it in my study. Of course, I may add some more things to it because my study is slightly different compared to others. So I can really modify it or adapt it to suit my requirements. So whenever you are doing all these things, we are going through this measurement items and all. So how do you get it? So refer back to literature, refer to seminal studies, landmark studies, and try to get those things and try to use it in your study. Of course, when you are talking about measures and all, you'll be going for this Cronbach alpha and all. It's nothing but internal consistency, and there will be some threshold values. Basically, they say like it should be above zero point 0.7, and then all your questions are actually getting converged. They are measuring the theme that you would like to measure. So these are some tests which you all need to conduct to validate your scales and other things. So determination of sample size, you have two aspects. One is go by rule of thumb, go by conventional approach, that is go for benchmark studies, or you go by cost basis. Cost basis is nothing like, always we prefer that bigger the sample size is always good. Now if you are not able, because but the sample size is coming at a cost, so what is your budget that has been kept for this research paper? So it all depends on that, and based on that you freeze. However, for quantitative and qualitative analysis, there are going to be certain tools which are used in the market wherein we can apply it and still get our sample size by using the confidence interval. You can see that the next is about conventional approach. One side you have title of the study, what should be the minimum sample size, and you can see the range which has been suggested. Now these are nothing but benchmarks which are already ready in the market. You can go about and looking at it and take a decision what should be your sample size. Next is again strictly going by the rule. You can see there based on the confidence interval. If I'm talking about 95%, which is there on your screen, and I'm looking out for plus or minus 5%. Okay, so you can see that what is the population size. You should be aware of your population size, and on the right column you can see the samples, okay, that are available to you, the sample size. So first is you need to figure out the population size. Once you know the population and you have freezed on your confidence interval, that is 95%, you are in a position to get the sample size. If you are not following this chart, you can quickly go through this sample size calculator which is there. You can see there on the screen, which has been looked upon, you have to put the 95% confidence level, and you should be aware of your population size. When these two things are there and the margin of error is clear, it is going to help you. It is going to generate the samples, and here on the screen you can see 357. So this is one small example. The link is given there. You can definitely Google and try to find out and try to put these values and get the sample size. So these are certain things which are followed to get the sample size. Now, which statistical test to use? Yes, you can see the slide there. Normally for a PhD level, most of the students end up taking chi-square on an ANOVA, or to some extent some regression analysis, and they just submit their thesis. However, you would like to take your work forward, then you can start adopting different tools. It can be correlation, it can be factor, it can be your discriminant analysis, or it can be your cluster analysis, or you can try out MANOVA, MANCOVA, or it can be your conjoint analysis. So like that, these are different tools. You can see the basic purpose of all these tools. These are the tools which are available in SPSS. You please use SPSS. Try to run these exercises which are there, and maybe you will be very comfortable. If you are not getting what to do and all, you can just follow my book. I had written one book which is published under Presidency Research Made Easy with SPSS. You can go through that and try to understand, because there are several examples which have been discussed how the tools have been applied. So if you get SPSS, maybe on trial versions, you can really work out on all these areas and try to understand how the tools need to be applied. Tools are really very important because they validate your data. Only oral communication or written communication will not be enough. We are going to collect data. We are collecting data. From the data, we put that data onto these tools and make a thorough analysis, and try to find out whether they are significant, they are not significant. Very interesting tools are there. You can see conjoint analysis. Any new product that you would like to launch in the market, definitely what combination it will really sell in the market, that can be looked upon when we apply this conjoint analysis. If you talk about Mancova, you can see there what is MANOVA. First, you need to be clear about MANOVA. It is about having two dependent variables, and you may have one or two independent variables. So when we have two dependent variables, we go for MANOVA. So what we basically say, multivariate analysis and all. So it can be one-way ANOVA, or it can be two-way ANOVA, where the independent variable, the number of independent variables are changing, but however the minimum dependent variable is two. Now to go for market segmentation and all, we go for cluster analysis. So this is again one more tool which is there in front of us. Somebody would like to launch a product, but he wants to find out which segment this product will be suitable, and definitely you can catch hold of cluster analysis. We also have a very interesting tool called as factor analysis. I'm sure what you can do, I'm sure you have gone through this factor analysis. It's nothing but it identifies the factors. These factors are independent factors which influence the dependent variable. So factor analysis, I still remember when I started writing the paper, I felt like if I know factor, if I know chi-square, if I know a little bit of ANOVA, I think like next 5 years I'll be writing papers, and that will be enough for getting publications. So these are some basic tools which you all of you have to do. You know what I did when I wanted to learn about these tools? I actually collected the Xerox copies of all the papers where tools have been used. That was even now also. I have a spiral bound where like a number of papers have been collected which these papers have tools being used. Now I just went through those tools, started learning on my own, read about them, what they have done, let me understand what they have done, and slowly started incorporating in my research paper. So it is very simple. Only thing, you need to get exposed to these things. So for that you need to collect, right? And first is collection is nothing but go through any journals, look out for the tools. Now, if you are after factor analysis, please make it a point, whichever paper has a factor analysis, have a copy of it and try to understand what they have done. Once you read those things, maybe the factor analysis concept will be very clear for you. Similarly, we have one more tool called as discriminant analysis. This is basically to classify the observation, right? And not only classification, at the end you are able to predict. Like I've done one paper which highlighted about so many customers do visit the retail outlets. Now, how do I know that so and so is a loyal customer and the other guy is a non-loyal customer? So I just came up with an equation under discriminant analysis, trying to find out if you put these conditions based on frequency of buying, the amount of business he is able to contribute, that number of times he is able to visit your store. All these things were considered, and finally an equation was derived. And the moment you put that value in that equation, maybe it pops up whether he's going to be a loyal or a disloyal customer. So once you know what that so and so is a loyal customer, definitely you can take some actions in terms of a promotional measures so that they end up spending a lot of money in your retail outlet. So like that, all these tools whatever we are studying definitely adds value, and there is a business implication, and as well as you will come out with a good paper. So the next part is about data analysis, okay, and interpretation. You can see the last part of it. You analyze the data, and these are the facts of, and these are the things which have come out from your research work, and you try to put those and try to find out facts of similar research. That means you have found out right from your research work, but there are similar kind of a work would have been conducted by others, and what they say, what your results say, are they in line or are they contradicting? If they are contradicting, then you have to give reasons, right, why it is contradicting. And if, when you justify that, maybe somewhere, like the editor will be happy, the reviewer will be happy to accept your arguments. Then we have this discussion. Discussion is nothing but it is different from your results. Results are mere facts, but discussion is going to tell you the importance, what it means. So these things are done when we talk about discussion. Finally, we have this managerial implication. All good management journals, they expect you to suggest some managerial implication, some inputs to the managers where they can use, and that will be useful for their business. So that is what has been tried out here. It explores the variable. It is nothing but takeaway to the managers. So a good paper definitely ends with takeaways for manager, and that also gives a reason for the company managers to read research papers to get some inputs. Finally, we are talking about limitation and direction of future. So you can see the limitation may be because of the technique or sample size or your scope or your resources or time constraint. All these things are going to be some factors which are limited. And finally, I have said that future use, that means possible areas of future research. This is what I have started my talk with this aspect. Please read future use or future research, because the author would have taken the pain in identifying the areas which he was not able to explore, or he may explore it later, but at that moment he felt like these are the areas, because when they are doing their research work, they will also come across a situation where they feel, yeah, this area I think I have not studied, and that can be put as one of the future research work. So always a research paper should end with conclusion. So it should answer the question. So what now? What is that you would like to say after you are after conducting the study? So it is just like looking forward. What we try to see in conclusion. So here you try to synthesize when you conclude. You have to redirect your readers, and you have to give a create a new meaning. So this is what I can conclude. This is the final conclusion I'm able to arrive at after finishing this paper. So references, you have different styles of references: APA, MLA, Chicago manual style. You will definitely find all these references. Different journals will have different kind of reference. It can be a Vancouver style, like I am Lucknow prefers Vancouver style, but whereas if you talk about Vikalpa and all, they talk about APA or MDI Gurgaon. They also want APA format and all. So these are different formats, different reference style which one can go about in using it. So at the last part we talk about appendix. So anything that is additional material which you would like to add to your research paper, you can put it as an appendix. These are popular databases. I'm sure you'll get it anywhere. All these things are databases which we need to have. In fact, most of the colleges have access to ProQuest they have access to EBSCO, because AICTE has made it mandatory that EBSCO should be there. So EBSCO will be there, ProQuest will be there. Embroid is pretty good, right? But it is expensive. You have CMI database or Cygnus is there, right? All these are different. Even Sage is there. EBSCO host is there. All are there in terms of data. So this is the final structure where you can see that abstract, there is keyword, abstract, keywords, introduction, right? And then this is the length. Just this is a summary of everything, whatever has been discussed. You can have a look at it and restrict your words. You can see the total words. It's coming to 7,000 words. Yes, Vikalpa says not more than 6,000, whereas MDI says not more than 7,000. Vikalpa says 8,000 all put together. MDI says 7,000. So like that, you will find different journals having their limits. But by and large, most of the journal between 5 to 7,000 or 5 to 8,000 should be the limit. Anything more which is exceeding, then you have to take calls in terms of holding yourself, holding your writing and removing unwanted things, make it more relevant and become. Now, where to publish? You can see that there are certain paid journals, there are unpaid. I advise you to go for unpaid, put your merit to work rather than paying some money. You have put in heart and soul in your work. Why to pay and publish it? Of course, if there is a hurry and there is a time constraint, you need to produce something. So at that time, you can go for this paid journals. Whenever you are choosing the journal, do follow the journal metrics, right? Where all they are indexed and all. Do they have some impact factor and all? These things have to be looked upon when we are talking about why to publish. So these are some examples for indexing. This one small example of MDI, where all they have got an index. Now the trend that is going on in the market is about ABDC ranking and all. You can see there it is ranked C for MDI Gurgaon. Similarly, Vikalpa is also C, and Bangalore is B. So like that, they have different rankings, and these are certain things, indexes, which you need to look upon. Then why go for Scopus? Scopus is well recognized. In fact, now everywhere you want to look at the credibility, they say like three aspects. One is ABDC, second is Scopus Index, third is UGC care list. These are certain things that needs to. Again, this thing is given, link is given where you can check a journal and its status, whether it is Scopus indexed or not. There are so many players who claim that theirs is Scopus index. Put that name into these portals and try to find out whether they are Scopus indexed or not. Otherwise, you will be bluffed. You have given your good work and they end up publishing it and you would have lost the opportunity. So before you decide any name that comes to you, please do check in this portal and try to verify it's a Scopus indexed or not. UGC care list, now the UGC has come out with UGC 1 and UGC 2 list, right? Put that journal name and try to find out whether it is UGC recognized or not. I strongly feel like UGC is not doing a great job here, but however, if your work is recognized in Scopus and other things, maybe things will be better. So sample list of journals, you can see that quarterly, so many are there. Take a look at it. These are the important apps which you need to have before you start writing your research paper. ResearchGate is really picking up. Mendeley, please do follow that. Have that app in your place. Reference and write, I strongly recommend. Please do have it because it will help you. It will help your research book, and you will, I'm sure you will definitely produce good work. I mean, like, the number of papers will increase if you follow, if you adopt these tools. And finally, we are going for external funding agencies. So we are just winding up the class at the earliest. External funding agency, these are nothing but where you can get fund for your research projects. So we have finished our presentation. Good luck. Any questions?